Tuesday, May the 17th, 2022. It is now 9 a.m. and we are in the community wing of City Hall. So with that, would you please all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if the clerk would call the roll, please.
Mayor Alphen.
Present.
Vice Mayor Branquino is absent. Councilmember Danko.
Present.
Councilmember Finelli.
Present.
Councilmember Clufus.
Present.
Thank you. Public participation is the next item on our agenda this morning. So before we begin, in order for city staff to be able to respond to our questions or concerns, please fill out a comment card with your contact information available from any member of city staff. The comment cards can be found on the table near the agendas or from the table in the back where the directors are seated, and they are all very attentive to your wants and desires back there. Public participation shall be held in accordance with Section 286.0114 Florida statutes and pursuant to the City Council's meeting policies and procedures. Number one, each speaker shall at the podium provide their name and may speak for up to 3 minutes. The public may provide comments to the City Council relative to matters not on the agenda at the times indicated in this agenda. Following any comments from the public, there may be discussion by City Council. 3, when addressing the City Council on specific enumerated agenda items, speakers shall direct all comments to the mayor, make their comments concise and to the point, not speak more than once on the same subject, not by speech or otherwise delay or interrupt the proceedings or the peace of the City Council, obey the orders of the mayor or the City Council, and not make any irrelevant, impertinent, or slanderous comments while addressing the City Council, which pursuant to council rules shall be considered disorderly. Any person who becomes disorderly or who fails to confine his or her comments to the identified subject or business shall be cautioned by the mayor and thereafter must conclude his or her remarks on the subject within the remaining designated time limit. Any speaker failing to comply as cautioned shall be barred from making any additional comments during the meeting and may be removed as necessary for the remainder of the meeting. Just before I open up for public comment, we do have agenda items this morning. If you would, it would be best for City Council to hear your comments and suggestions as they relate to those agenda items. That would be preferred if you'll cooperate with me on that. I appreciate it very much. But knowing that, I would open up public comment at this time for any members of the public that would like to comment on any item that is not a part of our regular agenda today. Yes, sir.
Robert McDonald, Palm Coast. I'm going to respectfully turn my back to the council because I want the audience and the people that are watching this at home to hear what I want to say. So I understand. I'll bear with you, but okay, bear in mind you're directing your comments to me. Okay. Okay. This past Saturday, we did the Tunnel to Towers run over in Town Center, and it was very well attended. So for anybody who helped out, greatly appreciated. I was one of the participants, and as I started to walk, I had my friend Walter here, and I had full turnout gear on, and this fella came by, didn't know much about him, and he said, "Do you mind if I walk with you?" I said, "Well, I don't walk too fast." He said, "That's okay, I'll walk with you." It's okay. So as we started to walk around the city, we started to have a conversation, and I told him all about me, and then he told me all about him. He said where he was raised, what he did, his family, his children, everything, all about him. So at he tended to run. I really thought that I knew this fellow, like from another life. Well, that wasn't true. So, the point that I'm trying to get to, I finally found out who this fellow was. And who was he? But David Alfin, our mayor. He walked step by step, every step of that walk with me. And there's no way in the world that I'm ever going to be able to thank him for what he did. Not because he walked, but because he took the time to walk with me. We didn't walk very far. And in fact, at one point, I took a trip and fell. But I got up and I finished as far as I could go. But now I'll turn around. But that man right there, our mayor, he took the time to not only come out and participate, not that because he had to, because he felt he wanted to, and that's a big difference. And then he had multiple other things that he had to do in the same day. So I want everybody in this whole city to know what kind of a guy he is. And if you don't have something to do someday, call him. And he'll sit down for an hour and he'll talk to you. And when you're all done listening, you're going to find out that you're a much better person. Thank you.
Your comment. I would only comment that my face is bright beet red because I'm embarrassed by the nice comments. That's not actually true. I was out in the sun too long, but thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
This might be an echo of what you just heard, but I would like to express how humbling it was to participate in the Tunnels to Tower event. I heard that over 300 people participated in it. I don't know the exact number, but I heard that it was over 300. My wife grew up in East Germany behind the wall and experienced the communism and the horrors over there. In fact, her brother was captured trying to escape. For her, her mental escape, if you will, was cross-country running. And she was good enough to become 4th in the country of Germany for cross-country running. She was on her way to the Olympics when she suffered kidney failure. And she has had, since then, 2 kidney transplants. But we did the 5K. And I have to say I was proud when we finished it to see you, Mr. Mayor, standing at the finish line, greeting people as we came across. And Councilman Kloufis, I was also proud to see you running it. Thank you. I couldn't run it. I haven't had my baby yet. But you did an excellent job. And many other people were there as well. There are those of us that watched the events of 9/11 from TV, hundreds if not thousands of miles away. And we learned the stories of what happened there many years later, and we're still learning stories today. I owe it to Mr. McDonald for making me aware of this event and of what Mr. Sillers did, running with 60 pounds of equipment to the towers and never coming out alive. It was an amazing event. I haven't been to an event that moved me in the way that did. And to watch my wife do her first event of running, or we actually walked and jogged a little, since Germany, since her kidney transplants. So I would like to make a proposal to you, to City Council, to change your agenda a little bit today and maybe have a consent item to have the city support the Tunnels to Tower event as an annual event from now on. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, please.
Steve Carr, Palm Coast. The city has many, many problems to address. And I always hate to come back up and bring up one that's constantly plaguing the residents of Florida Park Drive. Florida Park Drive has over 8,400 cars per day, or 3 million cars per year, going through a residential area. I handed out to you a study. It says, can traffic pollution negatively affect students' performance? And it really indicates that it can. And this study was actually done in Florida. As traffic along Palm Coast Parkway and Palm Harbor Parkway increases, so does the cut-through traffic on Florida Park Drive. Those two parkways are using Florida Park Drive as a transfer of traffic between the two parkways. There are actually 5 non-residential roads that go north and south from Palm Coast to Palm Harbor and Matanzas Wood. There's no need to use a residential neighborhood. So a lot of times get very complex as to why this problem cannot be addressed and fixed. I have been up here more than 10 years complaining about this, but it still seems to plague the city as to a solution. I've heard all kind of excuses of this project will do it, this project will do it, this project will do it, and none of the projects have do it. And in fact, 2 of the projects actually increased traffic on Florida Park Drive. So what is the solution to this? Can somebody in this city actually come up with a solution? It's just mind-boggling to me. Maybe another study that needs to be done is for the city to actually do a health study of the children that live along Florida Park Drive to see how this air pollution from those cars are getting to the children. The study says 820 feet away that it was affecting children. We're 60 feet away. The traffic is 60 feet from the homes of children, where children live. Also, the park in Holland Park is just 80 feet from the basketball courts. Please do something about resolving the excessive traffic on Florida Park Drive. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, please, or another speaker for any item that does not appear on today's agenda. Yes, sir. Just give them to the clerk, that's fine, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. My name is John Bukowski, 16 Cottage Gate Court, Palm Coast, Florida. We just recently have seen some turnover in our neighborhood, and a lot more expected. Most of the people in our neighborhood have been there 20 plus years, and they're getting to the age where they need either more assisted living or they're passing on in life. And a couple of the issues that we have in the neighborhood now is people seem to be buying houses in our neighborhood as investments for either Airbnb or VRBO. And currently right now on Cottonwood Court, both 18 and 22 are short-term either Airbnb or VRBO rentals. I would hate to be 20 Cottonwood and be right in the middle of 18 and 22. This past weekend we had 6 cars in the driveway, 2 in the garage, 4 in the driveway, and 3 in the swale at 22 Cottonwood. So I don't know how many people were staying in the house over the weekend, but with 9 cars, it probably was pretty intense. Thankfully, they were fairly quiet and didn't cause much of a disturbance in the neighborhood. But if you look on the paperwork I signed out, or handed you, it just says build your own B&B. And it says currently regulations for the county, but none for the city for these short-term rentals. And as more and more houses in Palm Coast turn, I would imagine you'll see more and more people looking to invest in these areas. I'd just like to bring it to City Council's attention that we should probably have some regulations on what happens with these properties. Okay?
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers that would like to comment to City Council at this time? Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I'm Al Cryer from the Safety on Cimarron Committee. I had 4 quick items to cover today. One of them was, at the last meeting, I stated we'd get a list of our blockers who work in the various sections of town on getting information to everybody concerning safety. And that has been submitted to Virginia to become part of the permanent file. Also, we have 40 blockers, and all their names and everything is on there. The second item was the presenters. We've had 20 presenters, and we felt it best to have that on file also, on the permanent file on safety on Cimarron. Another point that I was going to go on to number 2, so that's all in file, and we'll update it next year. If we take anybody off the list, we'll make sure that you have the most current volunteers that we've got. Number 2, I wanted to thank Carl Cody. He's done a beautiful job on arranging a public meeting for tomorrow night at 6 o'clock on pedestrian accommodations. And it amazes me, Carl and his crew, they give me a date and it comes right in on the button, never misses anything, and I really want to appreciate it, and it goes a long way. And I think Carl's got a direct connection because today's, number 3, today's newspaper has a very large article on funds being available from the federal government, from state, from certain counties for bike paths, sidewalks, anything that might help to alleviate some of the traffic problem. And I was real surprised. It was a huge paragraph in this morning's paper. So hopefully that's in the right direction. Now we got to figure out how to get our hands on some of that stuff. In closing, by golly, I made over 2 minutes this time. So in closing, I wanted to thank the city again for everything. The council has been terrific. My volunteers have been great. And I think I always like to end this way, and I was so pleased to have all the other positive things said today as well. But this is a good place to live, and I like it here. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your comment. Any other speakers at this time would like to comment to City Council? Seeing none, I'll close this portion of the agenda for public comment, and we'll move to the agenda item for minutes. And we have minutes to be approved for the May 3rd, 2022 business meeting, and also for the workshop held on May the 10th, 2022. Can I ask for a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion.
I'll second.
Perfect.
And a second. Clerk has it. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Motion passes.
Thank you. Very good. We move on the agenda to our proclamations this morning. And Councilman Clufus, if you'll lead us off with the first proclamation for Public Works, please. Don't let the boss get up there alone. All you guys, come on up.
Exactly right. Thank you for everyone being here today. It is, I'm very privileged to be able to provide this proclamation. I appreciate everything that all of you guys do and gals for keeping Palm Coast not only beautiful, but everything you do in our community to keep it up to the standard of living that we've come to expect here. So without further ado, whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Palm Coast. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our city's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, and our public buildings and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Palm Coast to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in the respective communities. And whereas the 62nd annual National Public Works Week theme, quote, "Ready and Resilient," is a tribute to the public works employees who have made a commitment to our communities. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the mayor and the city council of the city of Palm Coast, Florida, that May 15th, 2022 through May 21st, 2022 as Public Works Week, the city of Palm Coast calls upon citizens, businesses, and civic organizations to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions that they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Signed the 17th day of May 2022, City of Palm Coast, Florida, David Alphin, Mayor. No, thank you guys.
Thank you, Councilman Clufus, Mayor, members of council. Each year during Public Works Week, our professionals like to take on a few projects. So this year we kicked off the week with our Keep Palm Coast Beautiful event. You may have also heard our data analyst, Benny Cope, as he's taken on a new DJ position with public radio and is really putting the word out about a project of his that I think comes from a passion of public works and communicating with our citizens, and that's our Touch a Truck event. So we will be out at Town Center on Saturday, not only with equipment and vehicles from the city, but a lot of our community partners and neighbors are coming out to showcase some of what they do as well. It's a lot of work, a lot of time and effort that went into that, so thank you, Benny, for taking the lead. We're also doing an employee appreciation event this Friday to really show our employees the thanks that we have for them keeping our city beautiful each day. So we stand ready and resilient to support you, and we thank you for recognizing us for this Public Works Week.
You all are very much I'll steal a term from the realtors, the curb appeal of our community. You are, without a doubt, the first thing everyone new to the area sees, and that's first impression is incredibly important to help us, help our vision for the future. So thank each one of you for all of that.
And we do have a short video to go along with Public Works Week.
National Public Works Week is held May 15th through 21st. During this week, we celebrate the amazing work of public works personnel throughout our country, but especially right here in Palm Coast. Your City of Palm Coast Public Works Department helps to keep our city strong by providing an infrastructure of services, including maintenance of your city streets, landscape, fleet, and infrastructure, restoration projects for public buildings, spaces, parks, and grounds, emergency management, and first response assistance during critical events, and more. No matter the issue, your public works professionals here at the City of Palm Coast are always ready to serve their community and resilient as ever in their abilities to overcome challenges. Thank you to these amazing men and women for their tremendous efforts, not just this week, but throughout the year.
Okay, here comes the accent.
job. Push your tummy up. All the way to the sky. Everybody got on way too. And you, are you okay? We're gonna think you're doing well, right? We're gonna find your parents. Where are they?
Had never been in the water since age 16. And when I was at 61, I told myself that was one of the things that I want to conquer, my fear of water. I'm still not the best, but now I'm not afraid of water. Never would have thought that at the age of 62 that I would be here.
Isn't it nice?
Very powerful, very well done, that video. With that, let me read the proclamation. This is the proclamation for National Water Safety Month. Whereas the City of Palm Coast recognizes the vital role that swimming and aquatics-related activities play in providing a good physical and mental health, enhancing the quality of life for all people. And whereas it is important to understand the essential role that education regarding water safety plays in preventing drowning and recreational water-related injuries. And whereas the City of Palm Coast offers swim lessons, community outreach programs, private pool safety PSAs, and the Pool Safety Day event to educate the public and spread the practice of water safety. And whereas the City of Palm Coast Parks and Recreation Department maintains first aid, CPR, AED certifications for all staff, as well as additional lifeguarding certifications for its aquatic employees. And whereas we recognize the vital importance of communicating water safety rules and programs to families and individuals of all ages, whether owners of private pools, users of public swimming facilities, or visitors to the beaches. Now therefore, be it proclaimed by the Mayor and the City Council of the City of Palm Coast this month of May as Water Safety Month, signed by Mayor of Palm Coast. So with that, I had the good fortune to grow up in Florida, St. Petersburg actually. I remember fondly being in kindergarten and learning how to swim in the Gulf of Mexico. There are more children who die of water-related accidents in the state of Florida than any other state in the country. There is no excuse in my mind that in our area, every child shouldn't have the opportunity to learn how to swim. I would reach out to the public. I would ask City Council. I would say, ask your neighbor who has kids, ask your friends who have kids, ask them, do your kids know how to swim? The City of Palm Coast is committed to make sure they know how to swim well enough to prevent them from the tragedy of drowning. So I ask that very much.
Mayor, City Council, on behalf of Parks and Recreation, thank you for the proclamation. That video pretty much summed it up. Our staff is dedicated, and under Ali, the aquatic supervisor, provides fantastic lessons from toddlers all the way up to 70-year-old, 80-year-old, 90-year-old residents for the Palm Coast. And then we continue to train and make sure everyone in our resident using our facility is safe at all times. So thank you.
So as the #1 retirement community in the United States, it's never too old to learn to swim, is that correct?
No, never.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is an appointment agenda. If the clerk would take over now at this point.
Sure, Mayor, City Council. Last week, we presented the applicants for you to interview. Vice Mayor Branquino has made a choice, and each of you need to select a applicant as well, and then vote in totality on all of those applicants by the vote of City Council.
Could you just state the name of the committee again for the audience, please?
Sure, Vice Mayor chose Mr. Robert Brannon.
But the name of the committee.
Yep. The rest of the applicants are Charles Doak, Sabrina Rinaldi, Kevin Saint, Jeffrey Seib, Ronald Silvers, Mary Vasilevsky, and Joseph Wright.
And Mayor, this is for appointment to the Beautification and Environmental Advisory Committee for the city.
Okay, and can we get just a very quick summary of the responsibility of the committee?
Sure, the response, give me 1 second. The Beautification and Advisory Committee identifies and makes recommendations to PLDRB on matters such as beautification, scenic beauty, natural resources, conservation, and aesthetic enhancements. Environmental protection and other related matters. They evaluate and consider activities, methods, projects, and programs that could be implemented with the city. They recommend and review, approve applications for beautification awards, green or energy conservation efforts, art pieces, naming of public facilities. They also review proposed changes by staff initiation changes to the Unified Land Development Code, as well as comp plan amendments, which are in their area of review.
Good, and just as a reminder, appointed members of this committee will observe the sunshine laws of the state of Florida. So with that, I'll make my appointment first, if I may. Sabrina, and please pronounce the last name for me again.
Rinaldi.
Rinaldi. Miss Sabrina Rinaldi is my appointment for the BEAC committee seat.
Yep, and if I could make my appointment, I would like to nominate Kevin Saint to be part of the Beautification and Environmental Advisory Committee, the BEAC. Kevin Saint.
Gentlemen, your choices?
I'm on board with you. Sabrina is my pick.
We do need a different individual to be chosen. There's 5 that have to be chosen, 1 from each of you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were picking one.
Do you have the list, a list handy?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have,
I can go ahead with mine.
Yes, sir.
I would like to nominate Mary Vasilevsky.
Say the last name for me again.
Vasilevsky.
Very good.
My pick will be Jeffrey, and I can't pronounce his last name. Is it Seib?
yes.
Very good, okay. Thank you, Councilman. So you now have 5 choices for appointment. Does this require a motion of any kind?
Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Seib needs.
4/5 vote.
Yep.
Right. So Mr. Seib has completed 2 full terms. He will require a 4/5 vote. We don't have a fifth member today. So Nasa.
Oh, 1 second. Councilman, would you be willing to review the list again briefly?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So if I may, he needs a 4/5 vote. There's 4 of you here, so to get him appointed, it would need to be a unanimous vote.
He's served his terms as written in, and this would be over and above
would be
that
over-
service.
Right.
So I think the idea of city council is we want to make sure that we involve as many people in the community always as we can, but are very, very appreciative of the service that has been given by all the members of the BEAC in the past.
Mayor, I'll change mine to Joseph Wright.
Not a candidate, I'm sorry, that list is out of date.
Okay.
Apologies.
All right, who else is?
Mr. Doak, I read into the record last week his letter of why he was absent. Mr. Silvers called that day to let me know he was unavailable,
So, he was not here.
and Mr. Silvers was there.
Mr. Silvers will be my.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, so this gives us an entirely new board for the BEAC with a new vision as we move forward. So we will all work together on the responsibilities of that. Now, these appointments do not require a vote at this time. Is that correct?
They do require council to ratify the decision of each.
So I would ask for a motion
Make the
to
motion.
approve the 5 candidates that have been, the 4 candidates that have been selected this morning, and Vice Mayor Branchino's choice at the last meeting. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
So the motion to appoint?
Yes.
So I have a motion in the affirmative to appoint. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And I have a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion
Any
passes
opposed?
4-0.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So before we begin today with the council business portion of the meeting, I want to take a moment to discuss city council processes relating to approval or denial of items presented to city council at all business meetings. For each workshop, city council receives a comprehensive overview of each item. At that time, it is council's opportunity to provide opinions and ask questions on each item. Just as a reminder, items that are quasi-judicial in nature will require council to base their decisions on only what is presented at the scheduled public hearings conducted at the scheduled business meetings. The purpose of a business meeting is for council to review and weigh all the evidence and take action with decisions based on all information presented both at the prior workshop and today. So with that, we'll move on to Section H of today's agenda, which is titled Resolutions, and number 5. If council would go ahead and read number 5 into the record for us, please.
Yes, this is a resolution regarding a letter of support for the Flagler County Visitor Experience Center, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, approving a letter in support for the Federal Highway Administration National Scenic Byways Program grant application for the Flagler County Visitor Experience Center, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute necessary documents, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for implementing actions, and providing for an effective date.
Ladies, come on up. You have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Amy Lukasik, Flagler County Tourism Development Director, and I'm here today with Danielle Anderson, and she's the Scenic A1A Byway Administrator. And I'm just going to provide you a little bit of background, especially for the record, for those who may not know about our project. But back in November of 2019, the Flagler County Tourism Strategic Plan was approved and adopted. And one of our key objectives that was identified as a need was a visitor experience center. And that experience center will serve 4 main purposes. The first purpose is to enhance the visitor experience of the folks who are already here. The second one is to create new revenue streams, not only for our organization, but also other local businesses, to strengthen local and regional partnerships, and increase economic activity and educational awareness along the byway and throughout the county. And one of the tactics under that key objective was to work with other organizations that may have an interest in developing their own visitor centers to collaborate on one exceptional facility. So through those workshops, it was identified that the Scenic A1A group also had that in their strategic plan. So we've been working with the organization, Danielle, for over about 1.5 years now to see how we can best combine our resources and efforts. We share a lot of the same mission and vision within our organizations. So Danielle's going to give you a little bit of background on the grant opportunity that became available. And what we're doing now is just kind of making the rounds to our local partners, municipalities, so that we can have a strong application to show community support for our efforts.
Thank you.
3.6 million. That's the big number for us. Danielle Anderson, I'm Executive Director for the Friends of A1A, Scenic and Historic Coastal Byway. We're located in St. Augustine, Florida, and we span St. Johns and Flagler County for 72 miles along the stretch of A1A that's designated as a Federal Highway Administration's All-American Road. We are the second one in the state of Florida, which is a high honor for us. We received that designation in 2021, and shortly thereafter, we were notified that there would be funding available, a one-time group of funding for $22 million. It was actually $16 million with another 6 added. So that combined notice of funding was released this March, and we've been kind of waiting for this to happen. So we have activated all of our plans, and we're moving forward quickly to make this combined effort something that's going to benefit our community, not just for Flagler County, but St. Johns County, the state of Florida, and then also serve as an America's Byways outpost for the collection across the United States. So the process, it's a very short timeline. We were notified in March. There was a really quick turnaround as far as letter of intent requirement, and then also about 30 days after that you had to get your grant application in. Fortunately, the Federal Highway Administration extended the deadline by about 30 days, but it's still very quick. Our state has got a special process which the application goes through FDOT's central office, and then it goes to the governor for review. If it makes it off the governor's desk, we're one of 6 projects that made it that far, then we'll be able to submit to the Federal Highway Administration. And of the 6 projects that are being submitted for the state of Florida, the Friends of A1A actually have 2 that are under consideration. So it's a very exciting time for us, and we're hoping for your support.
Thank you. Danielle, if I may ask, or Amy, the actual deadline for the getting everybody on board is when?
So this Friday, I believe, is when we have to have everything to central office for FDOT. Then it goes to the governor's office for 3 weeks.
This Friday. So no pressure here locally.
Not at all.
Okay.
And then everything is due to the Federal Highway Administration for June 20th deadline for this round of funding. And there's no guarantee that there will be any additional funding after this appropriation is finalized.
With all due respect to your TDC part of this, let me yield to Councilman Kloufas. Any comments on the project? I do have a couple of questions. Did you want to intro any?
Just that I have seen the history of basically this taking place over the past few years now since I've been on the board, and I'm thankful and hopeful that the incredible staff is going to be able to do something remarkable, and I'm thankful that we have community partners with such great local community members that we're able to have these roots directly to our legislators. I think it's a rare time in the history of Flagler County and St. Johns County to have so many elected officials who are passionate about providing the best interest for our area, and I applaud you for taking advantage of it. And I know there's been hurdles and setbacks along the way especially with property prices rising and everything. So I commend the hard work and effort, and thank you guys for everything that you're doing for this.
Thank you, Councilman. Just a couple of questions for me. First one is, it's my understanding that there is a requirement that the visitor experience or the physical location would require close proximity or actually be along the A1A scenic highway?
The specific term is adjacent.
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 Okay, so I assume adjacent. Okay, good enough. It's my understanding also that our scenic highway generates increased visitor traffic through the area, which is significant. Okay. The other question I have is, there is no financial ask at this time from the city of Palm Coast. This is money available through the state?
No.
Federal.
For the federal government coming down through the state. If we don't ask for it, somebody else will get it, but there's no obligation on the part of the taxpayers here in the city of Palm Coast.
Yes, that's correct,
Okay.
Mayor. There's been 1.1 allocated and approved from the tourism development tax, which was paid for by the visitors who stayed in hotels and short-term rentals. So that is our contribution to the grant at this time. It is an 80-20 grant. So as Danielle said, I think what was exciting is that at first she submitted for a $500,000 ask, and then the state's FDOT came back and said, you need to ask for more. This is a great project. We're going to up it to $3.6 million. So it was very exciting that we had that support and encouragement to move forward with
Okay,
this.
and I have one last question, and I yield. So adjacent to A1A puts it outside of any city limit of the city of Palm Coast. So here's my request. However you can weave this into your process, I assume through our TDC representative on city council that the city of Palm Coast, have a vote or be a part of the approval process on the project. In other words, if you are asking us to sign up and collaborate and be a part of it, which I would very much like to see, I would also like to be, in charge of our participation in how the project develops. Is that a reasonable ask on our part?
Yes, absolutely, and that we're very sensitive to that, and we certainly do not want to give the impression that this is a slight to Palm Coast, because it's quite the opposite. That's why we're here, and when the time comes, we'll present to you through Councilman Clufus of our plans to further the economic activity, not just along the byway, but all throughout the county, into Palm Coast and to the western side as well. So,
And we all understand the future vision of Palm Coast defies the municipality lines or the lines of the county. It's for all residents of Flagler and all visitors. They don't really care which line they're stepping over. So we appreciate all of that. I just want to make sure that our input is a valuable part of the process.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely.
Any additional comments from council members?
I think you've summed up what I needed to know.
Okay, thanks.
I think it's great. Anytime we can go out and bring state and federal dollars here locally to make improvements and to provide more for our community, I think it's a no-brainer.
So the only other question is, are you going to be serving orange juice at this facility? For anybody that's ever come across the border into Florida, that's always been, the city manager reminded me, that's always been a big plus. You know you're in Florida when you get that little cup of orange juice,
right.
which is always handed out by a very friendly, retired face.
And we have wineries here, so we have winery slushies, so maybe that.
Okay, I'm not going to go there. All right, very good. So, with that said, I guess I would ask for a motion at this
I'll
point.
make the motion.
So we have a motion in favor?
Yep, second it.
And a second. So let's do a roll call vote, if you would. Yes.
Have we opened it to public comment?
I have not, apologies. So before we vote, we'll hold that motion and second. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on the presentation just made and the upcoming resolution which we are going to vote on?
Bless you.
God bless.
Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment, but thank you, and thank you, Counselor, for reminding me. So, again, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any additional discussion by City Council at this time? Ladies, thank you very, very much for your presentation, and I know all the hard work that the public probably doesn't realize has gone into making this, getting this far and getting to that very precious or special desk up in Tallahassee, so congrats on that. So now I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Danko.
Yes.
Councilmember Finelli. Yes. Councilmember Clufus.
Yes.
Mayor Alfin.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Congratulations, lady.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, guys.
Moving on to the next resolution, which is number 6 on your agenda. And Counselor?
Yes, this is the Piggyback Southwest Ranches and Nugent Strategies contract, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, approving piggybacking the contract between Southwest Ranches and Nugent Strategies and Solutions, LLC, for the preparation and drafting of the solid waste contract specifications, including recycling collections, processing, and disposal services. Authorizing the city manager or designee to execute said contract, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for implementing actions, and providing for an effective date.
The floor is yours for presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So one of the reasons you see my smiling face up here this time is we, as part of our strategic planning efforts, are beginning the process of transitioning the oversight of the solid waste contract into the Public Works Department with a look at going live when this new contract goes into effect next June. So as this resolution states, we are seeking approval for a relationship with NextGen as NewGen, I'm sorry, as a consultant to get us through the negotiation phase and drafting of the final contract that will come to you for review, discussion, and approval in the June workshop.
Very good. So from what you said, Cynthia, I want everybody to be aware that you helped us get this far up to this point in time. So thank you for all of those very tenuous and difficult moments, issues, and hardships that you've survived to get to this point, and handing over this package with a bow to Mr. Mansell for all the fun stuff that's coming. So with that, does City Council have questions regarding how we move forward with this? It's a request for a, what's the term you use?
Consultant services.
Consultant services, so it's a study to a certain extent?
So this consultant service will, once the apparent winning bidder is decided by the evaluation team, which is still in progress at this point, that consultant will assist us with negotiating the final terms of that contract with the apparent winner. They will also assist us with drafting the final contract that will come to you for review and approval, and help us build the presentation to explain those contract terms.
And your choice of Southwest Ranches is based on?
So this actually continues a relationship that we have with the current, so it gives us continuity through the process.
Okay, very good. Okay. Councilman Danko, a question on the process? This is really a process decision today.
No questions.
Yeah.
I would just say I support the piggybacking of this process-related item because this is such an essential service to the quality of life that we come to expect in Palm Coast, so I applaud this effort. Thanks, Mike.
And Mr. Mansell, I'll hold your feet to the fire here. You've met the consultant?
I have. I've worked with Ms. Cynthia through the evaluation process in this last proposal, and I've met the consultant several times through that. We do have catch-up meetings scheduled regularly between now and that.
So you feel comfortable that you can work well together and energize our consultant to get the very best result that we possibly can, because the citizens, the residents of the city of Palm Coast deserve our very best effort in this, so make no mistake about it.
Absolutely, Mayor. I have full confidence in
Very
such.
good, thank you. So with that, I guess I would ask for a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion
I'll second it.
and a second. Any other discussion? I would open this item up to the public. Would anyone like to make comment on this presentation this morning? Yes, sir.
Morning, Mayor. My name is Gene Dowd. I live in Palm Coast. Last week I talked about this little card, and that's exactly what I filled out, was where we stood on our solid waste. I bought this today because it's the last time it's going to say 2036. It will be now 2960 something. I commend the city staff for getting consultants involved in one of the biggest, most, during this time especially, challenging to get a contract that's fair to the city and the members that live in our city, the residents, excuse me. I also brought up a few weeks back that the other bidder, and it was FCC something and something, and Polk County is, I think, represented by that same company. And after we voted for the 1-year extension here at the council, they were in the news for being 13 days late picking up trash in their Polk County. And I'm just grateful that we don't have a long-term contract yet, that the city is going out for experts, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other members of the public would like to comment on this issue at this time? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Come back to the dais. Any additional discussion or comment at this time?
I didn't thank Cynthia. I just wanted to give a shout out to Cynthia. Thank you for walking me through this entire process, as well as Matt. Thanks.
And just again, to reinforce your comment, this is an organizational change. City Manager, any brief comment on this? This is, this is a big change in the right direction, I believe.
To the point of securing the consultant to navigate this next step, it really speaks to council's direction through their strategic action plan of high-value contracts, and this is just one of those examples of implementation going forward.
Very good. Thank you. With that, I would ask for a motion on this resolution.
So moved.
I have a motion in the affirmative.
I'll second it.
And a second as well. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Does the clerk have the count? Thank you. We move to number 7 in the resolutions. And Counselor, if you would.
Yes, this is a resolution regarding the interlocal agreement for the Citation Boulevard extension. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, approving an interlocal agreement with the Seminole Palms Community Development District regarding Citation Boulevard extension, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for implementing actions, and providing for an effective date.
Carl, if you would.
Yes, this item here is really to have an agreement between us and the entity to proceed with the construction of a roadway that will extend the Citation Boulevard from Belterre over to Seminole Woods through their development. I have a map up above that shows that extension. This has been to council in the past and previous discussions regarding some fire response times and the benefits to the city of moving forward with this project. So this just puts into place the motion of moving forward with that agreement for them to oversee and manage the construction of that roadway.
Okay. The only question I have is, I can't tell from the map, residents in close proximity that will be affected by it'll be a fairly long-term construction project, I assume. Are they properly noticed or informed about how they keep up to date with our progress?
Yeah, we have the capital projects dashboard. We will keep that on our website showing the progress. This will be going through vacant lands, and there's no homes that really abut the construction area of the project. So it should have really no impact to the residents.
Except at the front end and the back end, right? Wherever they're going to enter the areas?
Correct.
Okay, so and we'll keep people up to date on that. Okay, very good. Questions from City Council?
None.
Very good. Then I will open it up for public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this resolution this morning? Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment. And any further discussion? No? Then I would ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion to approve. A second?
Seconded.
I have a second. Any additional discussion? Then please, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Motion passes 4-0.
Clerk has the card. Very good. We now move further down the agenda to our ordinances, which are for a first read. And we'll begin with a presentation.
Mayor, if I may, read it into the record?
Please.
Yes, this is item number 8 on the agenda, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, repealing and replacing the prior master plan development agreement of a parcel of land being a portion of Reserve Parcel 13-1 of the subdivision plat of Royal Palms, Section 29, Palm Coast, recorded in Map Book 10, pages 17 through 29 of the public records of Flagler County, Florida, containing 27.79 acres as described in this ordinance, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for the taking of implementing administrative actions, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Council members, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, so if there's been any ex parte communications with regard to this matter, can you please disclose them for the record now?
Each council member?
I have none.
I
Councilman?
have none.
I've had no.
No.
Prior, okay, no.
Okay, then we
All
can
council
proceed.
members say no, right. Now, if you would please proceed with your presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, City Council, Ms. Bevan. My name is Ray Tyner. I'm the Deputy Chief Development Officer. To my left is Jose Papa, Senior Planner. We're going to do kind of a tag team on this. This is Ryan's Landing. It's a zoning map amendment. It is located just north of Royal Palms Parkway and to the west of Belterre Parkway. It contains 27.79 acres, and the property right now is vacant. More specifically, as you can see a little bit closer up, the property is bounded to the east by Ryan Drive and to the north of Ryan Drive and just to the southwest of Rye Apple. I'm going to give you a little bit of background because this does have a lot of history. And I'm going way back to when the city was actually incorporated in December of 1999. When we incorporated and became a city in 1999, this property, Ryan's Landing property, the future land use designation of that was the county mixed use, low intensity, with a low medium density, which means when we incorporated, you were allowed to have 7 units per acre on this property. And you were able to have some neighborhood commercial and some limited office. So those entitlements came over from the county when we became a city. It wasn't until 2004 that the city adopted its first comprehensive plan. Prior to 2004, what it was zoned and what the county was zoned was what the city had followed then. So the city's comprehensive plan designated the property as Greenbelt, which only permitted 1 unit per acre as a maximum density for that project. It also took away any of the potential commercial or office opportunities that that property had. In 2007, the property owner and the city became engaged in litigation as related to the future land use map designation of the Greenbelt that eliminated the development entitlements from 7 units per acre to 1 unit per acre. In 2008, the city's first unified land development code was adopted. So before 2008, we were following the county's land development code. So from 2007 to 2009, the City of Palm Coast and the applicant, Seagate, was involved with trying to resolve the lawsuit through a settlement agreement. And that settlement agreement was finally approved by City Council in 2009. And as part of that settlement agreement, the Master Plan Development Agreement allowed for 69 detached single-family homes and negotiation of dedicating approximately 5 acres for a future park for the city of Palm Coast. Within that settlement agreement, as part of that settlement agreement, the provisions of the Land Development Code for 2006 still remain. So as this was being negotiated, the Master Plan Development Agreement was completed, but they would follow the old county code from their original agreement. In 2009, approximately, the recession hit. Everything, as far as single-family houses, the recession really hit the city of Palm Coast hard. So for almost 12 years, or over 12 years, this Master Plan Development Agreement pretty much sat on a shelf. There was no activity whatsoever for that. It wasn't until early 2021, maybe late last year, that Seagate and the City of Palm Coast began discussions of revitalizing the Master Plan Development Agreement and looking at the agreement. We noticed too, because it's been a long time, that there were some really antiquated conditions in there. A lot of the conditions, Jose will cover that aren't in this draft, relates to conditions that would comply with our existing land development code. So remember, the old development agreement followed the county code, but since we have our land development code, a lot of those conditions that were in the old agreement are irrelevant. They just follow our land development code in this development agreement. Also, too, of us discussions with our Parks Department, Parks and Recreation, the idea of having a 5-acre park in that location just isn't feasible for the city of Palm Coast. Since that time, that 12-year period, we've got Ralph Carter Park that serves as that neighborhood park. And also, too, we have a park off of Seminole Woods that Seagate owns some property just north of that, so it made a lot of sense to get the 5 acres on the Seminole Woods area park in lieu of this. So the park in this new development agreement goes away because we have Ralph Carter Park in that neighborhood, and it's not needed within this area. The property owner, again, submitted a revised master plan, and this is what's before you. And Jose, Mr. Papa, will have a lot of those details that I've talked to, but it does have a lot of history, and I felt that we should have a pretty good background on it.
So continuing on with the current conditions on this property, the future land use map designation, based on that settlement agreement, designates this property as residential in Greenbelt. And that future land use map designation does allow for the zoning of master plan development under both residential and Greenbelt. So the change here, I mean, it's already designated a master plan development. It is the development agreement that's attached to every master plan development that is going to be amended. So this is the original conceptual plan that was part of that original MPD, Master Plan Development Agreement. This conceptual site plan, which was approved in 2009, included 69 single-family lots, 6,000 square feet on 6,000 square foot lots. It did include amenities, a stormwater pond, and of course, at the time, the negotiation to set aside 5 acres for a city park. So what are some of the changes to the MPD that is being proposed? The change is from 69 single-family residential lots to 95 lots, and so that increases the density from about 2.5 to 3.4. The 5-acre parkland will no longer be on site, but as Mr. Tyner submitted, about 4.5 acres of land, which will be donated by the current landowner to another city park adjoining Seminole Woods neighborhood park. And again, that's, as Mr. Tyner explained, due to the fact that the location of a park within this property is not really feasible with, under the current direction that the Parks Department is going. And of course, all outdated city and developer obligations are removed from the MPD, simply because a lot of those conditions have just become part of our land development code and the Florida Building Code. So they're no longer necessary to be called out in a separate agreement like an MPD development agreement. So again, continuing on, the owner, as we stated, will be deeding 15 lots abutting Seminole Woods Neighborhood Park in lieu of the 5-acre park on site. The other big thing here is that with that contribution, the landowner will not be requesting any recreational impact fee credits, whereas the original development agreement would have allowed the developer to get credits for donation of that land. Under this agreement, there will be no credits given to developer for the donation of those 4.5 acres. So in addition to that, under this amendment, there is still going to be a 50-foot wide stormwater easement around the majority of the project, and that will provide a buffer to the surrounding area. That's mainly to the southwest side of the site. And where the project abuts the existing duplex lots, which is to the northeast of the property, there will be a 6-foot tall fence to ensure privacy on both sides of course, to the existing development and the proposed development. There are no changes to the lot sizes. They'll continue to meet the SFR1 zoning district standards as contemplated in the original MPD amendment agreement. And again, just going into a little more detail about some of those conditions that are within the original MPD agreement that will be met just due to the updating of the Land Development Code and updated the Florida Building Code. The tree surveys, topographical soil and wildlife surveys are just part of our Land Development Code and will still be required. Internal sidewalks will be provided. Street trees internal project will still be provided. LED street lights internal to the project will be provided. A bike rack at the Amenities Center will be provided. Underground utilities provided. Irrigation that uses stormwater reuse, if available, will be provided. Landscaping per the current LDC requirements will be a requirement. And energy conservation section of the Florida Building Code. Again, this is one that's been updated since that 2008 agreement. So there is no need to call it out within that development agreement, but it is just part of that Florida Building Code. So this gives you an idea of where those 4.5 acres of land being donated will go. As this is Seminole Woods Neighborhood Park on Sesame Boulevard. The blue outline is the existing park, of course, and the area in red is what's to be donated to the city to expand Seminole Woods. So this is the new conceptual site plan. Again, it's 95 single-family lots. It will still have amenities. It will still have the buffer, that 50-foot wide buffer. That's sorry. There it is. On the perimeter, again to the south. This will be the southeast, south, and I think to the perimeter on the west side of the development. And a 6-foot fence adjacent to these duplex lots will be provided between the existing and new development. Looking at the criteria provided in our Land Development Code for this project, is the development in conflict or contrary to the public interest? The existing MPD zoning is permitted within the residential greenbelt future land use designation. Again, the proposed 50-foot wide lots are vested due to the consent order and will remain in place. The lots would front on an internal roadway to the project and you would not have driveways that are cutting directly onto Ryan Drive. There will be, of course, an access to Ryan Drive from the internal roadway to the project. Again, so that the access of those lots to an internal roadway will minimize the traffic impacts directly onto Ryan Drive. Is the proposed development consistent with a comprehensive plan? And in this case, it is consistent with comprehensive plan policies that speaks of discouraging sprawl. This is an infill development. This is a reserved parcel that is within an existing area of Palm Coast. It is served by utilities. You have existing roadways. Water and sewer is readily available to the site. And so it does discourage and promote infill, discourage urban sprawl, but promotes infill development. And again, the types of uses proposed, residential, is very consistent with the other uses found on the site or adjacent to the location. To the west, north, and south are single-family homes. To the east it's a duplex zoned area. It's a duplex zoned area, but I think you do have a mix of single-family and duplexes to the east of it. Does it impose a significant financial liability or hardship for the city? In this case, again, the public infrastructure is available to serve the site. Any extension of the utilities, the construction of the roads, the stormwater system that's to serve this development will be provided and constructed by the developer at the developer's expense. Does it create an unreasonable hazard or nuisance or constitute a threat to the general health, welfare, or safety of the city's inhabitants? At this time, again, this is a proposed use that is very consistent with existing uses that are found within that neighborhood. All improvements will be newly constructed and will be developed in compliance with the Land Development Code, the Building Code, and other agency requirements, such as Water Management District requirements for stormwater facilities. Must it still comply with other applicable local, state, and federal law, statutes, ordinances, regulation, or codes? Nothing in this approval will limit the need for this development to meet all those other requirements from other agencies. It will still need to go through that permit process. There will still need to be a subdivision master plan and preliminary plat that will need to be submitted to the city and reviewed by the city and applicable agencies. Continuing on with Section 2.0603 of the Land Development Code, as we stated previously, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and furthers the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan to prohibit sprawl and to promote infill development and to provide for uses that are consistent with the neighborhood. Impact upon the environment and natural resources. As part of the phase of any development within the city, preliminary plat, in this case for single-family development, preliminary plat will need to be submitted. That will include an environmental report, and in this report, which was also provided in the rezoning, we've noted that there's no protected animal or plant species located on site. There is no floodplain on the property, nor any conservation areas. As such, there will be no significant impact on the environment and natural resources. Its impacts to the economy are positive. Again, the city relies on construction as part of its economic driver. This will provide construction jobs. And its impact on governmental services, schools, sewage disposal, water, drainage, fire, police protection, solid waste, or transportation. Again, as part of any development within the city, there is a process. We're here at the stage where we're changing the development agreement for this project. As they move forward, there will need to be submit a preliminary plat application or subdivision master plan application with construction drawings, which will then be reviewed by various disciplines within the city, including some state agencies like the Water Management District. And again, the purpose of that will be to ensure that there will be adequate wastewater and water drainage, fire and police protection, solid waste, and transportation systems to serve the proposed development. Any changes in circumstances or conditions affecting the area the only change, there are no specific changes in circumstances or conditions that would affect the area since the master plan development was originally adopted the original master plan development was adopted in '09. Of course, as we see with that adoption in '09, the potential of having neighborhood commercial as a use under the Flagler County future land use map and zoning code was eliminated with that original adoption of the master plan development agreement. And its compatibility with proximate uses and development patterns, including impacts to the health, safety, and welfare of surrounding residents, and the proposed zoning, the proposed uses on the site consistent with the uses in the neighborhood. Does it accomplish a legitimate public purpose? In this case, again, we have a proposed master plan development agreement, which is permitted within the residential greenbelt flume designation. Staff feels that this is still an appropriate proposed use for this residential area of the community. The donation of the 4.5 acres of land adjacent to Seminole's neighborhood park for potential expansion of that park is appropriate and in a more suitable location. So at this time, and this application has gone through various public participation process. There was a neighborhood meeting held on April 6th, at Palm Coast Community Center. On April 20th, the Planning and Land Development Regulation Board held a public hearing and received public comments and voted 6-1 to recommend approval to City Council. So based on that, the Planning and Land Development Regulation Board recommends that City Council determine that the proposed rezoning, that is the new Master Plan Development Agreement for Ryan's Landing, application number 5037, is consistent with a comprehensive plan and to adopt the new Master Plan Development zoning district and the Master Plan Development Agreement for this subject parcel. Beyond this, there will need to be a second reading on the proposed amendment. And beyond that, if approved, there's need for a preliminary plat and construction plans, which will again be reviewed by staff, and with the final plat coming to the City Council for final approval. The applicant is here present and has a presentation.
Good morning. Jay Livingston with Livingston & Sword, here representing Ryan's Landing LLC, which is the developer of the project. As usual, staff did a wonderful job summarizing and going through the requirements for the rezoning request, so some of this will be repetitive. This is just an aerial showing the property in its current state and the surrounding neighborhood.
Allegedly.
Okay, so this is the fun part of this project because it requires us to go way back, even before there was a city. As most of you probably know, there was Palm Coast as a city or as an urban area was planned by ITT long before there was ever a municipality. And so a large section of the city that as we currently know is already developed or underdeveloped long before the incorporation of the city at the end of the last century. This map, which I finally got my hands on after several questions came up on various properties of historical zoning, is the state of the zoning map at the time of incorporation. So this is actually a scan of the county zoning map at the time of incorporation. I put this up to show you that how much of the city was already planned and or developed at the time of incorporation, but that little red circle is the location of the project. So this is like location of the project. I pulled it out a little bit so you could see there's two other parcels just to the north, but those three parcels, including the Ryan's Landing development site, are designated as FDD, which is the Future Development District. That was a district that was created by the county to specifically account for the Palm Coast Comprehensive Land Use Plan that was adopted by ITT after the State Land Planning Agency came in the 70s and said, whoa, what are you guys doing building all these houses without a good plan for roads, utilities, to avoid some of the mistakes that had occurred in the past in Florida when developers came in and developed large tracts of land without a good logistics plan for providing those services. So the comprehensive land use plan ultimately ended up being the final stage of a settlement with the state to ensure that Palm Coast developed in an appropriate way. And so some of the neighborhoods surrounding these FDD areas were platted, lots were sold, houses were built. The areas that were undeveloped at the time were given a designation as FDD in certain areas by the county to account for the comprehensive land use plan. So this map is actually directly out of the comprehensive land use plan summary. I have an old copy of it. I'm sure there's a few laying around here in the city. I provided the clerk of the Planning and Land Development Regulation Board an extra copy of the summary volume I had for the record. And this shows you the map at the time that the CLUP was adopted. I chose this map because it's actually the amended map, the one that was supposed to control. And it's important because the green areas shown on the map were the areas designated in the CLUP as registered and ready for sale, meaning they were, pursuant to the language of the CLUP, vested for development. Anything that's outside of the green may or may not be vested for development, but there's various standards that apply to those areas. The green areas of which this property is a part was part of that registered and ready for sale designation. The county then came in and adopted the FDD development district to fill in the gaps on the areas that weren't platted, didn't already have a specific zoning designation. And it's a little bit of a deceptive name because it suggests future development, but in fact there were permitted uses, as Mr. Tyner pointed out. There were limited permitted uses as well as several special exception uses that included neighborhood commercial uses, or limited office uses, which could be approved through just a request for a special exception. So they were already permitted with conditions. Additionally, you could do a residential project using the PUD designation, the county's PUD designation, of up to 7 units per acre. So those were actually, that was what the zoning was at the time of incorporation. And you can move on now. So those other two FDD designation or properties that were designated FDD, I put this in here just to kind of give you an idea as to what happened with those. They're very close by. They were also reserved parcels designated FDD. We have Riviera Estates, which is to the northwest of the Ryan's Landing site, and that was developed. It's 26.95 acres, developed for 63 lots. It's actually zone SFR1. Which is consistent with the zoning that we're requesting as far as the lot size. We're following the SFR1 standard. And then Rivergate, phases 1 and 2, is on 42 acres at 130 lots, and that is actually also an MPD. So the development pattern within the FDD parcels in this area is consistent with the proposed project. That's the reason I showed this to you. So this is the existing and the proposed zoning. Most of the time when we come in for a rezoning, we have a color change on the map. The color will remain the same here. When the city adopted its master plan development ordinance, it replaced its plan unit development ordinance. And so every parcel in the city on the zoning map that was previously designated PUD is now designated MPD. We're not requesting a change to that designation. We're just replacing the settlement agreement that Mr. Papa mentioned with a new settlement agreement, with the new master plan development agreement. The settlement agreement that's currently in place was, as Mr. Tyner pointed out, tied to some litigation that was, for lack of a better description, caused by growing pains of a new city coming in and dealing with existing land use entitlements. That settlement agreement actually has an effectiveness of 20 years, so notwithstanding the fact that the park was never donated and the city has no need for it, the actual zoning and conditions of that settlement agreement remain in effect until 2029. The agreement was negotiated in 2008, but I think was effective in 2029. So, if you can move on. So my picture's not as pretty as the one that the city used. This is actually right out of the recorded settlement agreement. But the original project was for 69 residential units, unrestricted, detached, single-family houses. There was going to be a 5-acre park donation, and the consideration for that donation was recreational impact fee credits for recreational impact fees that would otherwise be paid on a per-lot basis when they were developed. One of the issues that came up in the litigation was who was responsible for the park, and that was resolved and settled in the settlement agreement, and the city would be responsible to develop the park on the donated property. Unfortunately, because of times changing and better park planning, additional park facilities that were planned and built in the area, the city has no identified need for the park property, and the park property is not part of the city's capital plan. That's important because one of the conditions of the original settlement agreement was that the developer actually had to complete the conveyance, the donation of the park, before they could record the final plat. So no lots could be sold in this project until that occurred. It has not occurred. And so after discussions with the city, a decision was made to essentially abandon that. It doesn't make sense. Circumstances have changed. The city has no need for the park there, and so we needed to replan the project accordingly, and that's why we're here before you today. This is just to show you the comparison between what's proposed and what's existing. Right now we have 69 single-family residential lots or units, 2.48 units per acre. Everything else on this table for the most part remain the same. There's a few variations in the land development code, as Mr. China pointed out, because we now have a land development code that covers a lot of the things that were covered in the PUD. But for all intents and purposes, with the exception of the increase in units in the area where the park would have been, there really isn't any change to the development plan. This is the proposed MPA conceptual plan, and as you can see, the general layout remains the same, with the internal roadway pulling the traffic through that primary entrance to all the houses within the neighborhood. The area that's the park now has units. The amenity center was relocated, so now it's in the southeast corner for the project that will serve the residents of this community. There's internal sidewalks that are built. As much as the developer and the city would love for this to tie into external sidewalks within the city, unfortunately, this is one of those older neighborhoods that does not have a sidewalk system. In addition to the community center, there's 2 dog walk areas that are embedded throughout the park to create some more amenities nearby the lake and up on the north end where the little circle is to the sidewalk. The donation of the park is not removed from the equation, it's just relocated to the Seminole Park. And that's the 4.5 acres that Mr. Papa showed you, and there's another slide that you'll see. This will be a gated community, and it's intended to be age restricted. We've already actually submitted an application for the preliminary plat, and we've submitted the declarations of covenants and restrictions to the city for review, showing the age restricted component. Through internal discussions with staff, we also discussed the potential need to just insert that into the MPD agreement, and if that is a condition of the city, that won't be a problem. But that is the intention of the development. You can go, I'm sorry. So this is the table right out of the new MPD, and as you can see, with the exception of the 95 units which are not specifically called out on this table because it's elsewhere in the agreement, everything primarily remains the same in terms of the development pattern and the lot development, the only difference being the variations in the SFR1 zoning district that the city currently has versus what would have been under the original county code. One of the issues, we had a neighborhood meeting, and the neighbors were understandably concerned about new development in their area, as people generally are. And there were several issues that came up. The biggest issue was traffic, because there'll be new trips generated on the roads adjacent to the project and in that internal area, leaving the neighborhood. In addition to that, there was concerns about flooding, which which there typically are with new development, especially in low-lying areas like Palm Coast, and the impact that this is going to have on the environment of that project site, the flora and fauna that's currently existing there. Before I go on to this slide, the flooding issue, unlike the old ITT subdivisions that predated the modern water management district regulations, which is essentially, as you all know, a swale system that does its best and tends to have problems and requires lots of maintenance. This will be done with a modern stormwater system. The pond in the middle will be the detention area to hold the stormwater generated from the site. Under St. John's regulations, it is a requirement of your permit to show through your stormwater modeling that your pre-development discharge, the amount of water that comes off the site, will not be exceeded. So your post-development discharge of stormwater once the site is developed cannot exceed that pre-development discharge. So there's extensive modeling that goes into that to ensure that you're not changing anything downstream when you develop the property. In this case, both in terms of flooding that might come off of the site in its natural state, and as well as any stormwater generated by the site will now be actually directed towards that pond. So it will not make matters worse, and it very possibly will make matters better, because now the pond will be in existence to actually collect and retain that water. Right now, we have a natural site that flows in its natural state in whatever direction that water might want to sheet flow across the property. In addition, the benefit of doing an age-restricted community, with the obvious benefit of not putting any further strain on our school system, is that the ITE manual for traffic engineers, which is what they use when they design roads, design projects to determine the impacts of traffic, among other things, has demonstrated, and these numbers are based upon objective analysis. They actually crunch lots of data on a nationwide basis to determine how many trips are generated. They generate multiple versions of the manual. The manual, I believe it's in its 11th edition at this point, or it might even be later than that now. But under the current ITE trip generation numbers, a age-restricted community actually generates less traffic. We had a line engineer, and he's the engineer on the project, run those numbers to compare what a 69-unit non-restricted community would be versus a 95-unit age-restricted community as far as traffic generation. The total trips generated in a single-family detached housing project that's unrestricted at 69 units would generate 650 total trips. And a senior adult housing age-restricted community of 95 units would only generate 410 total trips. So actually, even though we are increasing the unit count by age-restricting the community, we're actually reducing the traffic impact of the project by 37%. And this is the last slide. This shows you, it's the same graphic that Mr. Papa showed you. This is just gives you an idea as to where the park donation site would be, how it ties into an existing park facility. This will replace the donations on site, and I think most important is originally, because it was part of a settlement negotiation and tied to litigation, the developer did request and obtain the right to get impact fee credits. This will just be a donation to the city to make sure that we're maintaining the intent of the original PUD agreement, but the developer will not be requesting any impact fee credits for that donation. So impact fees for the recreational impact fees will be paid on a per lot basis when they're developed. And the last slide is just the actual conceptual plan attached to the MPD for your reference. A representative of the developers here, and I am here as well to answer any questions you might have.
So, if I may first, Mr. Tyner, is there a need to, I think the attorney mentioned some language that would move from the old settlement agreement to the new settlement agreement? Is that something that needs to be brought to our attention?
Yes, sir. For the second reading, we'll go back. I think you heard Mr. Livingston. We will add language in the agreement that this would be an age-restricted community. We'll add that to the development agreement, and we will also add language, because it's not in there now, about them deferring of collecting impact fees. They're going to pay their impact fees normal, and they're not going to.
So it'll be consistent with the old, and you'll add the additional detail to it?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I'm sorry, forgive me for this. For some reason, I see 5 acres in my head for the park originally, and we're at 4.5 now. Am I just mistaken, or?
No, that's true, Mayor. You know, they provided all their lots that they had adjacent to the existing park at Seminole Woods, and that equaled up to about 4.5 acres. But by them not collecting impact fees, that's about over $100,000 in today's dollars. We thought that was kind of a fair trade-off. Actually, the city is probably getting a little bit more.
So let me, that's the reason I asked you the question. Let me challenge you with this, with the developer's attorney present. So certainly the donation of park area is a good thing. And city staff has determined that the new location for the park better suits the community, which they have, you all have the expertise to know that. The increase in value to the developer, and if the developer will to build as well, will be a multiple of that, is significant. Has there been an ask on the part of the city for the developer to contribute reasonably anything to the development of the park? In other words, we end up with a piece of land, which is nice, but to get from a piece of land to a park is a process.
Yeah, no, sir. Just we, did not collect the impact fees. They're not going to collect those impact fees, and we, at this point, don't know what we will plan for the park. We still have all that work to do as well.
Would the developer consider such a request, and I'm not putting any metrics to it, just to help get that park planned and underway?
Well, I can have the developer's representative speak to that. I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I think it's important to understand that, we have this 5 acres in mind because it was in the original settlement agreement. It's probably not a good idea to go into the details of that litigation, but that was one of the sticking points, was a demand from the city for the developer to build park amenities for a development for a park that far exceeded the developer's impact to the system for parks. The ask of the city at the time was patently unreasonable and probably illegal, and that's why we went to litigation and settled the case. However, it is important to understand that we do have a standard, and that's the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan requires that for every 1,000 individuals of population that a development creates, so for every population of 1,000 that a developer creates, they have to provide up to 8 acres of land for a park, for the recreation park system in the city. That's a comprehensive plan level of service standard. In this particular case, the metric that's used in the comprehensive plan analysis is for every unit you generate 2.4 people. So in this case, we're generating 228 new population individuals in the city, which would require 1.82 acres of recreation. Mm-hmm. So we're providing 1.42 acres on site, as well as the 4.5 donation site. So we're far exceeding the actual requirement of the developer in terms of the impact it's providing to the system.
Yeah, and this is, don't misunderstand me, this is by no means a demand. This is part of the vision of collaboration between the City of Palm Coast staff and our developers to, think past just, again, a piece of land, which in its present form is probably not usable as a park. We'll have to find a way to convert it into its desired use even back then to become a park. So it's just a thought process to talk about.
No, I understand. It's hard because the city doesn't have any plans for that land yet.
Understood.
And one can contribute, and
just want to keep the conversation open. Okay. City Council questions.
No questions, just clarification, just to make sure I heard it correctly. The standard is per 1,000 additional residents, it's 8 acres?
8 acres per
Understood. I
1,000.
wasn't sure if you said an acre or 8 acres. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
That
8
makes sense.
acres.
Makes all
Yes,
the
sir.
numbers make sense.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I
Councilman?
have no questions.
Okay, Councilman.
I do have a few. So, it's a gated community, age restricted. Everything within that community, the roads, the sidewalks, will be the responsibility of that community.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay,
There'll be
so-
private roads. In order to properly age-restrict the community, although we could do it in the deed if we wanted to, will be through a declaration of covenants and restrictions, which will create a master or a homeowners association. That's also as a requirement of St. John's as an operational and maintenance entity for the stormwater system once the developer completes it and transfers it. So those draft documents have already been submitted to the city, and they'll be responsible for the stormwater system, the roads, lighting, everything internal to the project will be the obligation of that association.
Excellent. Also, listening to several of the residents, reading over the meeting that took place, the two big things that I saw were their concern about the animals in the community. I know that part of this will be an environmental study prior to anything being done. Does that take into account the displacement of the wildlife in that area?
You know, primarily the environmental review required by the state and local governments, and the city including, is to look for anything that's protected or sensitive. The city also has a tree ordinance, so there will be a tree survey, and there's mitigation requirements if you eliminate certain types of trees from the canopy of the city, so you mitigate those, replace those, or pay into a tree fund. But as far as the actual animals in existence on a piece of property when it's developed, in general, no. They're everywhere, and when property developed, they are displaced. It's an unfortunate consequence of development, but it's not a criteria of the code or any state law that I'm aware of as a condition that has to be met by a developer before development is commenced, unless you're impacting a protected species like a gopher tortoise or an eagle or any other list of potentially endangered or threatened species.
So according to the requirements that we as city council operate under, it doesn't check a box of no, you can't. Appreciate your remarks, but our job up here is to determine that there are no boxes checked that would prevent this development order or eventually a development order from proceeding. I mean, your point is well taken, but it doesn't.
I understand
yeah.
that.
Okay.
And in some areas, unfortunately, in the old ITT portions of the city, it's not possible. The way it was laid out, it's not possible. But one of the things I'm sure the city has looked at and should continue to look at is maintaining wildlife corridors in areas of the city that it's developing that are not constrained by the old ITT plan. Because that is the best way to deal with displacement of animals, is to maintain wildlife corridors so they don't get trapped in between natural areas, which can create all kinds of problems in addition to just problems for those animals themselves. So that's something, I don't know if the committee that was appointed today is associated with that or if it would be a different committee, but I would encourage the city.
Certainly under our city manager, who has a wealth of experience in that particular area, is very keen to identify those wildlife corridors for future development.
It's an excellent planning tool. We're a little constrained here, but it's an excellent planning tool to keep in mind as the city develops, because it does avoid, to the extent possible, those negative impacts of development.
And I just have one more. I thank you for taking into account the traffic concerns and putting that in here, because I know that was another concern of the community, was the additional traffic in the area. Has there been any thought given to any ways to still continue to mitigate the impact of the traffic in that area, maybe turning lanes in and out of that community to kind of ease some of that burden?
That usually comes into play at a later stage, and I don't know, have you guys done any?
We've done some preliminary analysis from the preliminary plat that was submitted, and the traffic report doesn't warrant their turn lanes, right?
Yeah, this is the zoning stage. That turn lanes, especially when you're not dealing with MPD and you don't have a conceptual plan that's part of the agreement, are usually not determined until you go through the more robust analysis that happens at the site planning and plat stage. According to Mr. Tyner, the code doesn't warrant that. It's something that we can look at, but there's also a city drainage easement that fronts the property that is part of that buffer that was pointed out. And so the ability to potentially put a turn lane, even if warranted, could potentially create some issues. But we'll look into that. And if there's anything that we can follow up on at the next city council meeting, we will. There is one point that was made, an issue that was brought up that's directly related to that question that I do want to point out. And if you can go back to the last slide. Sorry. Yeah, if you can just go to the last slide. So one of the questions that was asked was why there was only one entrance in and out. And the city code requires any project with 50 or more units to actually have 2 accesses to a roadway. Only one of them has to be actually a paved primary access. The other one can be stabilized. It's primarily for emergency service vehicles to access it. If you look at the southeast corner, there's that little squiggly line that kind of goes in between the lots. And that is the stabilized access for emergency vehicles. The line, that curved squiggly line is actually a study that was done by the engineers to demonstrate that the city's emergency response vehicles could make that turn as a turning radius analysis to ensure that it's going to work. But the decision was made not to create a secondary access. If there was another collector road for the people in this project to go to, it might make sense to have a secondary access point, but I don't know if you can go back to the first slide. I'm sorry, I would do it myself, but this doesn't really show. So you see rimfire at the very top of that graphic. That is where, if you go anywhere other direction than north, and you get lost into the maze of the R section until you ultimately run into a canal. So that is where you go when you leave the project site. As you go north to rimfire, and then that takes you wherever you may want to go, both east or west. And so if we did provide a secondary access at that southeast corner, one, it's unlikely that people would use it very often because it's not the straightest line to the point they're going, and two, it would end up just putting more trips on that southern segment of the road, all going in the same direction. So it wouldn't have any real significant impact to it, but it is something that we looked at. And it was a request that was brought up by the neighborhoods when we talked about it, was looking into that and thinking about it. And that's the reason why we did not pursue a change of the plan, because it's not really going to have any practical effect.
Okay, thank you very much. You're welcome. That's it.
Mr. Livingston, eventually there'll be a homeowners association responsible, as you said before, for the common area maintenance, whatever, and I assume that includes the pond as well?
It would include the pond, it would include the fence, it would include the roads, the sidewalks, all the internal elements would remain private and would be the responsibility of that master, such as the gate, all those internal features that are not owned by the single-family homeowners would be common areas or areas of common responsibility that would be the obligation of the association. Okay.
All right. Any additional questions right now from City Council? Then I guess at this time I would open up. I'm sorry, Mr. Tyner, you're clear on the language that you're going to use to make the agreements conform, or okay, you're good with that. Very good.
And we'll generate a red line for you so you guys can see the changes in the next agenda item.
Okay, councilors, any comment at this time?
No.
So then I would thank you for your patience, and I would open up the meeting for public comment on this agenda item at this time, please.
My name is John Clark, and I reside at Renshaw Drive. I, along with a number of concerned residents in the R section, are appealing to the City Council to reject the current plan before you for Ryan's Landing. And we will outline each of our concerns in detail, with each person covering a topic within our limited 3 minutes. First is the density of the homes in this development. The 27.79-acre parcel is slated for 95 homes, 48% of which are on 6,000 square foot lots, 50 by 120 feet. That's 40% less than the homes along Ryan and Rye Apple Lane, whose lot sizes are consistently 10,000 square feet or a quarter acre nominal. Another 23% of homes are 35% smaller than the quarter-acre average. And of the 95 lots proposed, only 5 lots, just 5, are greater or equal to the 1/4 acre, and those are pie-shaped tracts along the corner curves. Well, here's a scaled replica of the houses on Ryan and Rye Apple. That's a 10,000 square foot lot. And this is what they're proposing, the 6,000 square foot lot. And if you look, this is my house off of the Flagler County Appraiser site. And I guess if I put it on this site, I'd be running out of space because it won't fit. They've got 5 foot on the side of each lot. When asked about the lots at the previous planning board meeting, the applicant stated the lots were consistent with the neighborhood, which is just not true. Their calculation of 3.42 acres per home includes non-buildable areas such as roads, swales, the retention ponds, tree buffers, and that community center. The actual acreage for buyers of single-family homes is 16 acres. That's how much their land they're using for houses, and that equates to 5.93 homes per acre, if approved. If you take the total square footage of all the proposed lots and divide it by the average lot size, you can possibly fit 65 homes, but not 95. And of course, this assumes that the applicant gets back those 5 acres it agreed to give to the city, which we residents strongly oppose. The applicant can expect maybe 50 homes on the quarter-acre lots. This reserve parcel has been a contentious issue for the city, and reserve land is not permanent green space, nor should it be developed beyond the limits of the community where it resides. There's a reason the applicant is requesting rezoning, simply because 95 homes is more profitable than 65 or 50. And your responsibility is to the community at large, and this is your one chance to get it right. Thank you for your listening to our concerns and balancing our city's growth with the quality of life.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker. Everybody have respect for the speakers. Next speaker, please.
My name is Jody Soto. Forgive me, I'm freezing, so I'm shaking. Okay. The master plan development requires a recreation area. The applicant's plan fell short in the current proposal. Only 1.5 acres, required is 1.82. Recreation consists of the community center and dog walks. An asterisk in their proposal states that, quote, additional off-site recreation area is being provided, end quote. That reference is to the drop lots in Seminole Woods that the applicant is offering in lieu of the 5 acres on this site. We would argue this is not providing this development with recreation. It is providing people in Seminole Woods with added acreage they likely don't need. Driving 5.5 miles or more to a wooded lot somewhere else does not satisfy the recreation requirement. The application documents base the size of the recreation area on a formula which begins with the expected population at Ryan's Landing. The applicant calculates 228 or 2.4 persons per household. The City Council should ask the applicant for current populations of persons in their other 55-plus communities. Are they similar to Ryan's Landing, or are the actual numbers of persons per household greater than 2.4? Do they even know, or is this an educated guess? Could the number here be 250, 275, or 300 residents? We ask this because the recreation area formula is based upon this number. The current calculation requires 1.82 acres of active recreation. If the actual number of household members is, say, 2.75, not 2.4, the acreage requirement is over 2 acres. The applicant can easily meet the requirements by modifying the plan. We urge the City Council to clarify and verify these numbers provided by the applicant before accepting them as accurate. If the 2.4 people per household is wrong, then the acreage needed is wrong. All recreation area for this development should be in this development, not off-site. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. And the next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Jack LaForte. I live at 1 Rybach Place. At the planning board meeting, the applicant pointed out that this is a 55 and over development. It was claimed that it would equate to there being much less traffic for the neighborhood than a non-age restricted development. It was indicated that traffic in a 55-plus community would be 40 to 50% less. However, I don't believe this to be true. Why? Because not everyone in this development will be over the age of 55 nor retired. Florida's total population in this range is 40%. Nearly 30% of those age 55 and over are still working. Many of the households of these persons will have 2 vehicles and 2 drivers due to the fact that there is a lack of viable public transportation in Palm Coast. Under the federal law, as part of the Fair Housing Act, age-restricted developments are subject to the 80-20 rule of the Housing for Older Persons Act. Therefore, 80% of the owners must be 55 years of age or older. The remaining 20% of the owners don't have to meet this age requirement. Therefore, a percentage of the homes could be owned by people under 55 years of age who are actively employed. More traffic. The state laws, local laws, homeowners association laws, and its bylaws would determine the minimum age and the number of persons living in a household. Also, those regarding guest visitations, how long they can stay, the age of guests, and the types of vehicles owned, for example, motorcycles, RVs, etc., all raise several unanswered questions. Therefore, we need to be aware of the Homeowners Association's rules for this development, since each development has its own laws and bylaws. This can easily result in several persons in the development being much younger, whether living there or visiting for an undetermined amount of time. These issues must be monitored. Question: do we have the proposed bylaws for this development? On an ending note, we don't know what this development will look like, especially if there's one entrance and exit that is proposed. Another question: is there an artist's rendition of what this proposed development is going to look like, especially the entrance? I believe that the overall design of the development and the appearance of this entrance could affect the property values of the highways.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, please.
My name is Mary LaForte, and I live at 1 Rybach Place. A major safety and traffic concern with the applicant's proposal is the single entrance and exit onto Ryan Drive. At the planning board meeting, it was noted that an emergency entrance and exit is included. They mentioned that providing a second entrance and exit for all residents would not alleviate the traffic on Ryan Drive, as people would continue to make a right turn onto Ryan Drive regardless of another entrance being added. I believe this to be false. The current entrance and exit directly across from Ryburn Way could be dangerous and result in accidents for 2 reasons. People leaving Ryan's Landing must look for vehicles coming from Ryburn Way, in addition to vehicles traveling in either direction on Ryan Drive before exiting. Another concern is that there is a school bus stop at the corner of Ryburn Way and Ryan Drive, which is the exact location of the one and only entrance and exit for Ryan's Landing. Children stand at that corner waiting for the school bus, and parents line up in their cars along Ryburn Way waiting for the school bus to arrive. The entrance should be located elsewhere, possibly between Ryburn Way and Rykill for improved safety, or a second entrance could be constructed near the pump station further along Ryan, and this second entrance and exit would allow people to exit Ryan Drive by turning left. They would still end up on Rimfire Drive. Having a second entrance and exit would split the traffic, alleviate a choke point on morning and evening commutes, and lessen the backup heading to Rimfire Drive. 2 existing developments constructed by the applicant have 2 separate entrances and exits. In addition, other developments, one on Whiteview and a 55 and older development on Prattwood Drive, have 2 entrances and exits, not 1. We believe this is both a public safety concern and a traffic flow issue and can be alleviated with dual entrances and exits. Questions: are there any plans to extend the turn lane on Belterre heading north when turning left onto Rimfire? And are there any plans to widen Rimfire between Belterre and the first Ryan? Finally, on a different topic, if all the lots do not sell for any reason, including a housing bubble burst, will the gated entrance and the 6-foot wall be completed during construction or not until all the lots are sold? I do not want it to look like a construction site any longer than need be. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Is there another speaker, please?
If I can approach it. We have petitions signed by over 100 people at this point, requesting that you deny their application. Excuse me. So a key question here
If you would just
is-
introduce
I
yourself for the record, thank you.
I apologize. Kim Olson, and I live at 151 Ryberry Drive. A key question here is the trend going to be to downsize lots by 40% to put more homes closer together, if that's the current thinking of all of you. Our current roads on Lehigh Woods, that's Ryan, Rimfire, and those adjoining those, were designed to facilitate the 1/4 acre lots, not high-density 6,000 square foot lots. Excuse me, I was wondering why I was having a problem here. Is the council prepared also to authorize increasing our roads to handle these additional vehicles? We don't believe the majority of Palm Coast residents would sign off on this rezoning application, especially those of us that live there in Lehigh Woods. And that's why at this point, just in the short 2 weeks, have gotten 100 residents to sign that. Now, keep in mind, there are already parcels within the master plan in Lehigh Woods that allow for such high-density construction. That 35-acre site on Red Mill Road has just approved 216 apartment units. We don't need to rezone existing parcel to increase their density. That greater density is a foregone conclusion. We ask the council to look not at this plan in a cursory way, but at the application closely on its merits and weaknesses. Take a deeper look into this project and what it means to those living nearby. The changes our neighbors have raised will improve the neighborhood while allowing for controlled growth. Keep in mind, we don't seek to stop this development of this parcel. We just want to ensure it's compatible with the neighborhood. Please imagine yourself living in a home on Ryan Drive and ask yourself if this plan is best for the property, or can it be modified and altered to better serve the community and the people who reside there. Human nature has taught us that when negotiating, you always ask for more than you would expect and expect more than you would get. And you should keep in mind that if you haven't looked at the complaint filed by Seagate in the county here, they even in their own complaint set forth that on March 20th, 2007, they, in trying to settle with the city, agreed to 67 homes, a second access road, and no entrance gate. The only thing they had a disagreement was who was going to pay for that park. A piece of property that could be just fine staying wooded as it is. We believe the applicant has given you a complete holiday wish list within this proposal. Should the city council decide to give them everything they seek and not dig into the details, we'll be asking you what we're asking you to do, then the neighborhood and the city will bear all the ultimate cost. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comment. Is there another speaker that would like to comment on this ordinance read at this time? Seeing no one approach, let me come back to the dais now. Let's entertain comments.
I appreciate both not only the presentation and our staff's work, but also the citizens' input. And I concur. I think that the entry and the ingress and egress routes into the community could prove to be an issue. So I think that's something that I would like to communicate with staff over the between this and the second reading of this to try to firm up that everything is up to the safety standards. And what we expect in a community in Palm Coast, and also with our emergency services to make sure that we're able to provide the level of service that we expect in Palm Coast. I think the park is something that's evolved over time, and not necessarily the same situation that we had back in 06 or 09, but again, I would have to convene with staff to ensure that we're all reading the same story here, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilman?
I would like staff to address the school bus stop in front of the main entrance. Have you looked at this?
I thought that was an excellent comment. And typically what we do during our preliminary plat stage, during the construction plans, we have a representative as part of our team on our development review from Flagler schools. And that's one of the items that we do look at when they get into details, what makes sense for a bus stop location. So we will address that during the review.
Moving the bus stop location or moving the entrance?
Both, all of that. Yeah, our Flagler schools is part of this, and specifically, we want the safety for the kids.
And the lack of a second entrance, which obviously with what we've got proposing now, would need to accommodate our emergency vehicles, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to hear from our chief, our fire chief, on that aspect, if I could.
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning. I had stepped out, so if you can bring me up to speed on what the question would be.
If we could show him the slide with the
If I may,
second entrance.
the question is simply, well, you correct me if I'm wrong. So we're discussing the whether or not the currently planned second entrance, which is a graded entrance, not a finished entrance, has the turn radius to accommodate your equipment in any type of an emergency situation.
And also the type of grade. I've never seen an entrance like this. Is it going to put extra wear and tear on our fire and emergency vehicles? Or
We do have some of these in the community. Over by the Oaks, there's a few of these. This would just have to meet the weight of the truck, which would be 72,000 pounds or 26 tons. The turning radius should accommodate that. I would actually have to see a scale drawing, a little bit more defined than this, more up close so we could see what the fire truck's actually turning radius would be. But looking at this, I could say that we would make these turns. The ladder truck and the tower truck might be a 2-point turn, where they'd have to go up, reposition, and go back in, but I think this would be accommodating for all fire apparatus.
I guess my concern is that it slows your response.
Not significantly.
Okay.
And as part of that review process, this is the zoning. So when the preliminary plat comes in, we have our building division that works very closely with them. So they will actually bring us engineer drawings that show the modeling and the turn. We will have more detail than what this plan is to make that determination, and they're part of that process.
And I would like to ask whoever, someone brought up, when does the fencing go up? Are we going to be looking at this construction site, or does that fence go up when construction begins? I'm just curious.
Chief, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
And we'll make sure to provide the fire chief and his department scale drawings so they can analyze that. As Mr. Tyner said, that's done normally at the preliminary plat stage, but since we've already submitted that application, we actually should have that data to share, and we can also include that in next month's agenda package. There's a couple of things I wanted to clarify, one of them being the question about the fences. So the way that subdivision development happens is, unless it's phased, is we get a preliminary plat development order, and that gives us our construction permit to go in and put the subdivision improvements in. And the fence and the gate would be the last of that first stage. So the gate and the fence would be installed prior to any house development occurring. So it would happen in that first phase of development. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I didn't want to get in the way of your all questions. I do have a couple of points I want to clarify.
Sure, go ahead. Those were my questions.
I'm sorry, if you would. Council, just hold on 1 second before you summarize, because I want Mr. Councilman Finelli to.
I just have one. Mr. Tyner, what is the process for plat approval?
The plat, the subdivision process is typically a three-tier step. The next process that, if this is approved, they go through a preliminary plat. That's with all the construction plans, all the details, a stormwater pond, all the St. Johns River water management permitting, all those details. That, once they get that approved, then they can start construction of the project. Then the final plat, it's basically technical. That's where you show all your easements, your lot sizes, a lot of your details of recording the plat of record so you can actually sell the lots.
And the approval of the plat will come through city council?
Yes.
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 Okay.
So, and I'll give you 1 second. So
That would be the final plat, sir, I'm sorry.
The final.
Yes.
So there are a large number of steps that have to be walked through before the development order, which is really the trigger for a project to begin, have to be satisfied. And there were several different comments which are correct and well said that have yet to be addressed in the development order, in the build-up to the development order process. But, okay. Counselor, if you would go ahead and summarize, if you can, some of the points or respond to some of the points made by the residents.
Yeah, I wanted to address, because they're really good points. First, I wanted to address the comment about the density. The actual density being 16 acres, or calculated against 16 acres. That's a standard that we follow from your own comprehensive plan. It does not obligate us or require any developer developing any type of property, whether it's residential or non-residential, to utilize the area that you're building on. It's a gross calculation, and it's used to determine consistency with the comprehensive plan. There are certain caps depending on the designation in the comprehensive plan that you have. In this particular case, for residential, which can be up to 15 if it's MPD, but in this case, because we're doing a single-family one-type product, the way the comprehensive plan is written is our maximum cap is 7 units per acre. However, it's a little bit, this calculation is a little bit different because there's a component of the project that's in the Greenbelt designation, 5 acres, which is allowed 1 unit per acre. So the actually average between the two areas is 5.9 units per acre, and this project comes in well below that. 3.4 units per acre, I believe, is a calculation. So that's just to demonstrate consistency with the comp plan. I understand the analysis that was given, but that's not the framework that we work under within the city under your comprehensive plan to demonstrate consistency, which, based on the numbers I just gave you, has clearly been demonstrated. The recreational level of service is also an interesting question. The way that the comprehensive plan is drafted, and please jump in if I say anything wrong, but is based upon the basic demand that's created within the city for recreational use. We'll take a little closer look at that, particularly to see if there's any differences in the impacts of recreational needs when you're doing an age-restricted community, because that was not something we factored in. We followed the standard of the comprehensive plan of 2.4, which is the next thing I wanted to clarify is that this population number is not something that we came up with. This is a standard that is built into your comprehensive plan. Any project in the city that has a residential component generates population based upon 2.4 people per household. We will take a closer look at that, even though it's not required by the comprehensive plan. My guess is that it would result in a lower number because we're dealing with age-restricted houses. So even though there is the possibility of certain individuals below the 55 age limit, as pointed out because of the Fair Housing Act standards, the 2.4 is really to account for a nuclear family with children. And the children will not be there. But we'll take a look at that to see if we can find any metrics to show what the actual population generation from an age-restricted community is. And we can provide those numbers to you, although, like I said, that is a standard from your comprehensive plan. It's not a number that we came up with.
And I appreciate that. You know that in our strategic action plan, we are preparing, well, we've already written in the fact that we're going to be we're going to be reviewing, evaluating, and updating our comprehensive plan for the future. But if you could include with that data some of the actual figures from some of the communities that were referred to that we have right here locally, that would be wonderful for us to see.
Yeah, I'm going to look and see if there's any nationwide data, because obviously a small sample size might sometimes give you a skewed result, but we do have age-restricted communities that this particular developer has developed, and we'll get you that
Yeah,
specific data.
I would love, be local. I love the local as opposed to the national, if we could have that.
And then that goes, again, the standard that was used for the population calculations from your comprehensive plan standard, your level of service standard. The same is true of where the traffic numbers came from. These are manuals used by traffic engineers, as I pointed out earlier, and they gather data. When you see the little lines on the road, sometimes that's the city taking traffic counts, sometimes it's people from ITE taking traffic counts, but those numbers are not theoretical. We're not dealing with theoretical physics here. This is based upon observational data, and they have determined from that observational data that the traffic generation from an age-restricted community is less. If all of those factors that were mentioned about how it's not as simple as just age-restricted are true, then those would be reflected in that data, because this is based upon actual traffic counts taken from areas that have these age-restricted communities. So it's not, maybe it would, if you just took a straight age-restricted community with no 80-20 factors or anything else, you would have even a higher or a lower amount. But the difference here and the difference in the IT trip generation manual should account for those. We'll see what we can do to get data on how IT generates that data to clarify that and to verify that. But those numbers, the manual's updated as they refine their data and refine their standards.
Okay.
So it should account for that. The proposed bylaws for the development have been submitted as part of the preliminary plat. However, if we add the condition to the MPD, so it's no longer a concern of that private covenant, then that should address that issue, at least in part. But if anybody, they're not final yet. We were provided them to the city for comment, and we would finalize those once the development plan is finalized, which sometimes things change when you get to preliminary plan because of other factors.
We'd like to see those, okay.
But those have been provided to demonstrate our intention to age-restrict it, which is going to be bolstered by adding that to the MPD. The last thing I wanted to mention is a school bus stop. It's actually a conversation that we had leading up to after the neighborhood meeting, leading up to planning board. And this is not an age-restricted, this is not a community that's going to generate the need for a traffic stop. But the city does have some land in the surrounding areas that are potential locations. We have to coordinate with the school board. There's a pump site and there's another site that there might be some extra space. The problem here, and this goes to the heart of the access road location, is that I encourage city council to drive this neighborhood and circle the project, is that the way that Ryan's Landing is configured, you have at least 2, in some ways 3 blind curves. And this access road was put in the middle of the longest length of road in order to minimize conflicts with that blind curve. If you move it in any other direction, you're going to start running into conflicts with that blind curve. And even though in most situations when you develop a piece of property, there's a lot of clearing, which is going to open up sight lines, in this particular case, because of the 50-foot city's drainage easement and the landscape buffer that's required, there will be natural vegetation that will remain along that area. So that blind curve problem will not be alleviated by site clearing like it would in other projects. So that location, we believe, is ideal. It also, we always are concerned about conflicts with school bus stops. Myself, the developer, we have children, we had to take our kids to the school bus, or we rode the school bus when we were kids and had to deal with cars going by. So we understand that concern. This particular location, although it is across the street from the primary school bus site, as we indicated, is going to largely, if not predominantly, result in right-hand turn lanes out away from that school bus site at the entrance. There'll be traffic control devices, stop signs, as well as a gate to slow down traffic coming out of there, so people aren't going to be blasting out of the neighborhood unless they want to take the gate out. and they will be turning away from the school bus site. They won't be actually going across the street where the school bus site is and where the cars are lining up, which would be a problem because there's nowhere to go in that direction. They'll be going north to Ringfire. So obviously something that needs to be looked at, and we'll make sure to address that with more specific data at the next reading. But the location has a benefit both in terms of avoiding blind curve conflicts as well as providing a right turnout away from that school bus site. So we're not going to be driving through the crowd of kids that are going to be standing across the street within that school bus area. That's not the likely traffic pattern from this project because of the location of Room Fire and the primary access road. I just wanted to clarify that for the record. That's all I have.
Okay, your comments?
I like your suggesting that we should drive the area. I plan on doing it.
Please.
Good. I do have to stay for 1 second, please. I have a question. There was the gentleman made a rather graphic presentation on lot size. I'd like staff to review, and I have to remind myself to stay in my lane. We stay in our lane in City Council in terms of what we're doing up here today. We're looking for reasons why this project would not conform to our comprehensive plan. I think we've covered most of those issues now, but the valuation of homes and lot size in those neighborhoods, there are examples of any number of homes on a similar lot size. My reference is to be consistent with the neighborhood. As part of our development process, we have to be consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. So I'd like you to be able to look at that and know that the valuation of the properties are consistent once you get far enough along with the look of the project.
And the reason why I provided those graphics of the other FTD development sites within the surrounding area was to demonstrate that the one, and I'm forgetting the names now, Riviera Estates and Rivergate, yeah. So Riviera Estates was, which was one of the FTD sites, which under the county comp plan could be developed up to 7 units per acre, was developed at SFR1, which is what our lot size conforms to. And then the other FTD site within the immediate area was an MPD, and the lot sizes are consistent with the project. So in terms of these FTD development sites, they were developed post-incorporation of the city, consistent with, less than, but consistent with the higher density permitted under the comprehensive plan in the county, consistent with the comprehensive plan in the city, and primarily along the SFR1 zoning district. So the development pattern for this particular reserve parcel is consistent with the closest reserve parcels that were in the FTD district within this immediate area. That's why I put those graphics.
So if we're committed to smartly manage the growth of the community, obviously we want to make sure that the community, the neighborhoods around it benefit from the project as well, and it not be any kind of a negative to that. So I think we're on board with that. Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I may.
Please.
So the standard that's in the code requires compatibility with proximate uses and development patterns, including impacts to the health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding residents. So what we're talking about here is compatibility with proximate uses, which we have single-family residential here, single-family residential surrounding for the surrounding residents, and a development pattern. And I think that you're bringing up the point, and hearing more about this is probably beneficial, because that's one of the items that you have to look at, the development pattern,
Right.
and what those single-family lots and residences look like in comparison with the surrounding residents, and whether or not it's compatible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. So let me start with my comment. So at this stage in the development, I find no item that prevents the process from moving forward at this point. Now, there's been a lot of conversation, and there are a list of tasks that staff will tackle and come back with additional information. I'm also relying on the expertise and the experience of the PLDRB board who voted this project forward. So I'm in favor at this stage of getting to the next step, because I am not aware of an issue that would prevent us from doing that.
I think that's absolutely fair, and I think you did a tremendous job about explaining the additional steps that are required before we get to the part where we actually see renderings and we can make determinations on what the project will actually look like. This is strictly just for the rezoning portion of this process, and it's only the first reading of this rezoning process. So I just want to thank you, Mayor, for doing a good job illustrating that this isn't the end-all be-all in any means, and honestly, it's just the first small step forward before we get to the further steps of this process.
So with that discussion could come additional discussion. I would look for a motion at this point.
I would make a motion for approval.
Is there a council member that will second the motion?
I'll second the motion just for a little further discussion.
Okay. So
This
we have
is-
I'm sorry, we have a motion and a second. Now I'll open up for discussion.
This is just the first read, as you said. So I plan on visiting the area, and I plan on looking forward to seeing what staff and council comes back with before this second read, before I make a decision. So I'll reserve my final decision, but I want this process to step forward as you suggested.
And in
And I
addition,
think the concerns of the people that live there, I'd like to hear more concerns. If there's other things you can bring us, because the school bus concern was important to me. And, but I look forward to hearing your comments, next time this is.
and staff will update the data that we have talked about. So there's quite a bit more to the process. Mr. Finelli, any discussion?
I'd just like to thank staff for all the hard work that they put into really vetting everything and going through this process. And I also would like to continue to work with the citizens that are here today, and please continue to bring us your concerns with this project so that we can make sure that they are addressed, and that we move forward in a smart, managed growth way.
Okay. So with that, very good. We have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Danko?
Yes.
Councilmember Finelli?
Yes.
Councilmember Clufus?
Yes.
Mayor Alfin?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your comments today.
Yeah, thank you.
With that, we'll move forward on to our consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that City Council would like removed? Councilman, any members on the consent agenda you'd like removed?
I have no items from the consent agenda I'd like removed.
Very good. Just a second. Good. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on the consent agenda at this time?
I don't know if it's appropriate, but as I had mentioned earlier, I'd like you to perhaps adjust the consent agenda to add making the Tunnels to Towers an annual event.
So I appreciate the comment, and I'll just comment back. It's a publicly noticed meeting, so we publish the agenda in advance. Certainly, I think.
If I may,
Yeah, please.
Mayor, so the way the process works to add something to an agenda, the council has rules and procedures at the meeting. So if there's an item that a council member wants to add to the agenda, they would have to make a motion to do so. And to get it on the same agenda, that's typically for emergency items. Now, a council member can make a motion to move that an item such as this one can be considered in put on an upcoming agenda, and then it's properly noticed and staff can be prepared to provide any background for that request.
Maybe let me adjust for
Give
seconds.
me just a moment.
Sure.
Let me get to my comments at the end. I think, give us a moment. Thank you. Any other comment on the consent agenda today?
I'll make the motion to accept it.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. I'll now open the meeting up to public participation for any items that were not previously discussed on today's agenda.
Good morning again, Mayor. Gene Dowd, Palm Coast. I would like to thank the staff for the Saturday event on the walk and run, tunnel run. Emotional story, as Mr. McDonald talked about and the other speaker. I was walking, and there was not just city council members, but also city employees working together and walking together. There was two people I noticed. One was an Army veteran, a young lady. So I walked up to her, and I knew it was a 60-pound sack on her back. And she goes, "You must be Army too." "Yep." And she ran. I did not. And as I was walking, a woman thanked me for my service. And last week I said, "Some give all." So she told me her son served in Afghanistan. And I asked her to thank him. And she said, "Well, next time in Washington at Arlington Cemetery, I will do that." It was very emotional. I didn't know what to say. But I will say, as I try to remember, law enforcement, fire, EMTs, all medical staff, and especially the city staff. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public that would like to make final comment today?
Steve Carr, Palm Coast. As we, as a community, start building and getting more community housing into the area, I always stop and think, how are we going to get these people out of Palm Coast if there's a national disaster that needs to get the people out of Palm Coast in a quickly and safely manner? So I think somehow we need to look at where all this congestion is all of a sudden showing up, and what roadways are there to get the people out of the way or get them safely out of Palm Coast should there be a national emergency. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your comment. Any other members like to make final comment today? Seeing no one approach, I'll close public comment, and I will move right now to discussion by City Council of matters not on the agenda, and I'll start first, if I may, if I have your permission. So, I want to thank Sheriff Rick Staley and each of the deputies who participated in the National Peace Officers Memorial Services held at the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. this past weekend. The Sheriff's Honor Guard of deputies volunteered to forsake personal time and time with their own families to comfort and honor the families of their own community. The grief of loss is intolerable at times, especially memorial ceremonies. The strong, steady, dependable, and steadfast presence of our deputies provided escort and comfort, uniting our families of fallen officers. Each member of our honor guard stood watch with tireless dignity and elegant grace. I hope others will never have to suffer the tragedy of these families, but always remember that your sheriff works tirelessly to wrap a blanket of comfort and warm friendship around every member trying to navigate the loneliness of loss. Take a moment to thank a deputy. Offer a thumbs up or your nod of approval. The Flagler County Sheriff is your community's family and friend. And with that, let me just call out specifically Sheriff Rick Staley, Chief of Staff Mark Strobridge, Commander John Dobb, the Honor Guard, Commander George Bender, Commander Glenn Davis, Deputy Michael Spinelli, Deputy Jeremy Chambers, Deputy Brian Sheridan, the Motor Unit, Those are the guys on the bikes. Sergeant Scott Veter, Deputy Brandon Fivash, Deputy Carmine Selico, Deputy Brett Wood, and Deputy Greg Nunziato. I will personally tell you that I stood with these fine gentlemen in the hot, overbearing sun to give the peace and comfort to our families' communities. So I hope you will give them that thumbs up when you see them. With that, I would also ask City Council to consider changing over to the 5K for the Towers to Tunnel Foundation. That was such an excellent start that we do make it an annual event and that we do consider the item on our next available future agenda. So do I need a motion on that?
I'll make that motion if you need it.
I'll second.
Very good. I have a motion and a second.
Is Carl going to beat me the next time we have this race too, or how does that work? No, absolutely.
Well said. Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Does the clerk have the vote? Thank you. Very good. Okay, those are my comments for this morning. City Council member?
Oh, I have none. That was very well said, and a tremendous turnout event this weekend, and thank you to all city staff and participants, and I think you said it very well. Thank you.
I have no comments.
No comment.
Good. I think City Attorney, you're up next.
I have no comments today.
And City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I actually have two items today. One is administrative in nature, and that's emergency sole source items. If you have any questions, now would be the time. Okay, my second item is I'm pretty excited about. So we started this meeting this morning recognizing the talent and commitment our employees have for this organization and our community. To continue the spirit of recognizing our talented professionals, I'm honored to share a special announcement today. The Parks and Recreation team is treasured by our residents, businesses, and visitors, and has been successfully led by Ms. Lauren Johnston for a long time. And now it's a time for a new leader to take the department to the next level. And Lauren, thank you for being at the ready as always. After an exhaustive interview process, I am proud to announce that Mr. James Hurst was offered the opportunity to lead the Parks and Recreation Department and has accepted the position as the next director. Lauren?
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. It has been an honor to work alongside James Hurst throughout both of our careers. James, if you'll come forward. James is very passionate about Parks and Recreation. I've watched his leadership grow throughout the years and witnessed his abilities to coach. I'm very excited for James and the Parks and Recreation team as they continue to be a bright spot for the city of Palm Coast.
Oh, well, thank you, Mayor and City Council. I want to say a special thank you to Lauren. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be where we are today, so thank you so much, Lauren. I do have some big shoes to fill, so, but no, thank you, and I'm excited to lead our fantastic staff, our Parks and Rec staff into the future, so thank you.
I'm sure City Council will agree with me that as soon as you adjust your accent and speak English, you'll be perfect.
Right,
Listen, congratulations, and we mean that sincerely.
Thank you.
City Manager, does that conclude your remarks?
It does. Thank you, Mayor.
Then at this time, I would ask for a
motion.
I have a motion to adjourn, a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.